Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Digital Media Sync. I am Julia Gambali, and I'm with Agents of Branding, and I'm also host of Digital Media Sync, of course. I'm here at Known Co-working. I'm actually sitting in my office, and Known Co-working is open and ready for guests. So that's very exciting. And I also wanted to let you know where Known Co-working is. So we are at 139 Orange Street in New Haven. So we're in the Ninth Square area of New Haven. So we have a lot of restaurants and coffee houses here. We have coffee inside the space. We have dedicated desks and offices and meeting spaces as well. So if you go to nhvknown.com, you'll be able to see all our in-person offerings. During the pandemic, we started doing a lot of live streaming, and we have 3 shows in particular where we live stream. So I'm going to go to that on my computer. So Known Live has it's virtual programming for the community. And the 3 shows are the Connection Corner. So it's calling all entrepreneurs, artists, dreamers, and change makers. And it's one-on-one talk or panel with the host, Barbara Nangle. And I'm going to go back to that pretty soon as well, because we have a show, actually a couple of shows that are coming up. Digital Media Sync, which is this show right now. And I'm usually every Tuesday morning at 8:30, but then I also will do shows on other days as well, especially when the topics are really interesting, really important, and informative. And then we have Pivot Talk, where businesses must evolve. So I'm going to jump over to what's going on with the Connection Corner really quick, and then I'm going to introduce Raisha Bivens from Stop Solitary CT. And I've been waiting to have this conversation, so I'm super excited about it. But coming up later in the week, on Friday, we have Introducing You, Personal Branding and Photography. And that is going to be with Samantha Shannon. She's a very talented personal brand photographer. And in this show, she will discuss how she became a photographer and the importance of personal branding in business and common misconceptions people have about photography and branding photography in particular, specifically. And then next week, actually that's not up just yet, but we're going to have another Connection Corner up next week as well with Mindy Englart of it's, oh my goodness, what is it? It's singlemomsdiscountcard.com. And that's something that's going to be really interesting. So right now, I am very excited to be introducing Raisha Bivens. Good morning.
Good morning, Julia. I'm so
How
happy
are
to be here.
you?
I'm good. Happy to be here.
I'm so happy too, and I'm really excited about this because I don't really get to dive into stories and kind of like the arc of like a personal story, and then also talking about advocacy and activism online. This is, I think, probably the first show where I'm talking about that with you, and I get to talk to you. So let's start with, I think the best place to start, and I think that you laid out like what the agenda of the talk was going to be so very well. So let's start with if you can talk a little bit about you and your personal story and kind of like what this journey looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got involved where I'm going to start the story is with my brother. I got involved in the activism to end solitary confinement in Connecticut after going through a horrible, awful experience with my younger brother, Joshua, who has schizophrenia. So by training, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I practiced social work for over 12 years. Left the work formally in terms of like doing that as a day job, but always still had a commitment to really make sure that we are living in a just society where we provide what people need. And then all of a sudden, you know, my brother, who has schizophrenia and was diagnosed probably for about 4 years, he was incarcerated. And it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking because I had been supporting him in the community, and he had been doing really well. He was working full time, and just, you know, you hear horror stories about what happens to people when they get in prison. And lo and behold, I started advocating for him to get into a treatment setting because he wasn't convicted of a crime. He didn't have a trial. For 3 years, he actually did not have a trial and just had a really high bond. And I was appalled when I found out that he was being housed in a cell where he was there for 21 hours out the day. And that was a common practice for people with serious mental illness to be held in a cell 21 hours out the day. And through my personal journey with him and really supporting him, I just vowed that not only was I going to help him personally, that I was really going to transform the system so that all people with serious mental illness get the care that they need. And really all people, right? But
exactly.
But as someone with a social work background, you know, it was just appalling to find out that over 60% of the people who enter into prisons in Connecticut have existing mental health issues. And in one sense, prisons have become the new mental health institutions, and people aren't getting what they need. And so.
And I want to stop there for a second too, because it's interesting, right? Because if we pull back and what you just said, where the prisons are the new mental health institutions, and there's a huge gap between being able to get the help and the health care that you need. And I think this also speaks to the fact that, you know, we need to have some sort of a better healthcare system overall in general, but again, really with mental health. And I actually learned a lot about schizophrenia as well, and finding treatment early, because I actually worked on a project with Mind Map, it was called, here in New Haven. And it was this, you know, it was basically trying to educate people about schizophrenia, and parents specifically, and what to look for in their kids, and that there is help and that sort of thing. But there's still like a huge gap. So just the fact that you're talking about educating, advocating just in the mental illness, you know, or the mental health stage. And then like now there's this whole part of the system that's imprisoning people. Not only that, but putting them in solitary confinement. Okay, so now let's move forward. Do you want to talk about how this turned into a larger kind of organizing and educating kind of organization?
Yeah, sure. So I you know, just I live my life through the principles that we really do have the power to create what we want in our lives. And I knew that even though I was dealing with a circumstance that was difficult, that I was going to say how it goes. And I just started really sharing with everybody in my life that I was going to transform the system. And you know, lo and behold, people just started connecting me. I met with Senator Winfield before I even got into Stop Solitary, the organization. And then, you know, in my daytime job, I manage a cosmetic dental practice. And I just ended up sharing with someone what I was up to in terms of wanting to transform the system, and what I was up to with my brother. And I ended up learning that they were actually a part of a legislative steering committee to end solitary confinement. And this person and I, who you may know, Allie Perry, she invited me to be on the board. And it was like a no-brainer. Like, of course I would do that, because I don't want anybody in Connecticut, or anybody in the world for that matter, to suffer and to have their loved one deal with what my brother dealt with, which, by the way, he ended up having diabetes at the age of 29 and being hospitalized in the prison multiple times. It was making him worse. And that's not just my brother's story. Yeah. So, yep, I was invited to be on the board after just really sharing what I was up to and what I cared about. And I did that and still do that all the time with people, random strangers or people I don't know, because it's important.
Yeah, no, that is really important. So with StopSolitaryCT.org, how did you get like really connected and involved with that? And then I think we go into like the nitty gritty of like the online advocacy and activism as well.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been on the Stop Solitary board for about a year and a half. After, you know, I was invited to be on the board, I just started participating as a board member, which means that in my role, I help drive, you know, our policy agenda. At the time, before COVID happened, we were advocating for our bill, the Protect Act, at that time. But because of COVID, and because of how that impacted our government, we really couldn't push for the full legislation to be passed last year during the pandemic, because Governor Lamont was only signing executive orders. So we focused more of our advocacy last year on really making sure that prisons were de-densified, because otherwise they're a death sentence for people incarcerated. And we really advocated that all people who could be safely released could be released. You know, people nearing the end of their sentence, people that were eligible for parole, and compassionate release programs, which many other states did during the pandemic, recognizing that you can't socially distance during the pandemic. And then, you know, I had the pleasure, I think right before the pandemic happened, we brought a replica solitary confinement cell to the Capitol, and I was the volunteer coordinator at that point in time, where, you know, I coordinated volunteers to make sure that that cell was open throughout the day so that legislators could really experience, like, what is it really like when we say solitary, right? It's kind of a misnomer, right? It almost could sound peaceful, but it's not. Imagine being in a box the size of a bathroom that's dark, where you hear people screaming, where you hear them banging on walls. So that was the first time that I was brought on in also a consultant role, and I did that. And then this year, we knew the legislative session was going to be full stream ahead. And I was hired to also be a consultant accountable for digital organizing, which is running our Facebook and our Instagram and bringing people into our campaign through social media activism and running bi-weekly organizing calls. So that's been kind of my personal trajectory with the organization.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about, because now we're talking about from the perspective of doing the organizing both in person and online during a pandemic, trying to reach as many people as possible. So if we're talking from, you know, now we're using almost like marketing terms, but you kind of do, right? So like from a strategic perspective, what does that look like? Because you have all of these moving parts, and then you have thrown in specifically that now a lot of this has to be done online and in a very, very, you know, different way than what we might be used to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to, just for some context, I want to shout out my board members. We have 9 people on the board. We have 2 other consultants. So there are some people that still kind of lead the in-person stuff now that it's safe to do it with masking. But this is very critical. And, you know, what it looks like for me as someone who has my master's in social work and concentrated in community organizing is you know, at the start of becoming a consultant in this role, I really identified, you know, what are the organizations in the communities that I want to connect with, to partner with, who already are like so aligned with this mission. And I would, you know, invite them to our cause, you know, share with them, you know, our agenda, our priorities, you know, reshare their things on Instagram and Facebook. You know, so at the basic level, kind of like that's what it started, really identifying who can easily partner with us because they already are identified as like a social justice or human rights organization.
Right.
And you know, just from there, you know, I developed like a social media strategy that was going to really bring hope. It was really important to me that although this is really sad, disheartening, and really
Yep.
unacceptable what Connecticut prisons are doing right now in terms of having solitary confinement happen, it was important to me that our social media reflected what's possible if we actually get rid of the system that doesn't work and we implement a
Right.
human system. So I literally would map out on the calendar what are posts that are going to educate people, but also have them get that if they're involved, there is hope for this to transform.
Right.
And you know, that may sound broad, but that's what like I kept in mind as I would curate the post. I try to do it a week ahead of time so that it's planned. And
Yeah.
you find when you have an intention, whether it's in person, online, when you have an
Right.
intention, people will step into that intention. So people inbox me, oh my gosh, you know, I love what you're doing. How can I get involved? I've you know, I've had formerly a couple of formerly incarcerated people who I'm talking with in our inboxes who want to get more engaged. And sometimes they also need support in terms of what they're personally dealing with, or they just want to share their story. So I'm going to be also doing more live interviews where I could really have a platform for their voice, because
Right.
I feel like that's what's, you know, that's what's needed. So it's a lot of just having an intention with the post, and
Yeah.
you know, targeting people, and then also just being present and available when people just do respond, to let them know that their engagement is important, and inviting them
Yeah.
to take the connection just from like online to liking our posts, to coming to our calls, coming to our
Right.
events. So in addition to, you know, having the Facebook and Instagram that I manage, we also have a Google group for those about, it's
Okay.
right now, yeah, it's close to 70 people who have stated they want to be more actively engaged and come to the organizing calls and do phone banking. So I would say that the online platforms are a start, and they're a portal. They're one portal for people to
Right.
step into our organization and movement. And what I try to do is orient them to what other ways they can get involved and continue with us. So
Yeah. And I want to step in for just a minute too, because you
yeah,
touched upon a lot of really important kind of, you have like very strategic goals, you have a nice broad strategy of how you're going to run this campaign. And I think the thing that really that strikes me too is always being able, well, first of all, right, taking something, but like you said, right, it's like, oh my goodness, this is horrible, this is negative. And then like people are like, I understand this, I'm taking this in, I want to do something, what do I do? And you're right
yeah,
there and you're like, you know what? This is great. There's something to do. Here are ways that you can be involved in this. And
right,
that is just so important, because both from the perspective of, we were always in business, we're always talking about like, what's your call to action, right?
yeah,
What are the things that you want to bring people in to do? Same thing with organizing. It's like immediately, it's like if you're going to be telling a story and it's something that people want to change,
yep,
how do they feel empowered to do so? Right. And
yep,
starting from a point of hope, and then you get excited, and then it's like, okay, yes, I want to do this.
yeah. Can I say something about that?
Yes, of course.
Okay. You know, I am like, it just, I'm into personal growth and development. So I always have these moments where I have an epiphany, but it is so moving to me that that we have people from all walks of life that get
Yeah.
on our organizing calls and come to our events. We have people in their 60s, in their 70s that come to our calls because they want to make a difference. We have
Mm-hmm.
a high school student from Danbury who's in the process of organizing a club that he started of about 60 people so that they can know about the Protect Act and probably go stand for their parents to support the Protect Act and call the
Right.
legislators. We have white people, Black people, people who are formerly incarcerated. And it's just so moving that when you put something out there and you really let people know the importance of something, humanity comes together. It
Yeah.
really gives me hope in an era where there's a lot of division, you know. So I'm sorry, I got emotional, but
No,
I
it's, you know
know
what,
that.
it's
Yeah.
so true. And you know, I really think too, and you know, in the digital age, and I'm just gonna like bring it back like to like generalizing so that people, you know, understand too that like this is a template as well. Like what you're doing is a template for other actions as
Yeah.
well. Like this is a roadmap, basically.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so understanding that it is possible to use online communications for good, like
Totally.
100% for movement, for action, for activism. And just really quickly, and I knew, and then we'll definitely get right back to this.
Sure.
When we were offline, you know, one of the things that I was talking about was there was a book that I read that a friend of mine gave me. Um, oh my goodness, and I'm spacing on what the Twitter and tear gas.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it sounded like, whoa, like that title grabbed you. But basically what that meant was in the age of kind of everything being global, everything being online, forms of action,
Yep.
forms of activism, forms of protest or rallying in the way of changing things are being brought online into the forefront so that
Mm.
we can engage. Sometimes, yes, it is, you know, very negative, but other times
Yep.
it's very empowering. And, you know, we're
Yep.
thinking about this, Black Lives Matter, voting, right? Having people giving people the right to vote, access to water, like all of these things
Yep.
can be presented now um, to a larger platform. You know, and
Yep.
I think that in what you're doing too, it's the same thing because again, I know we were also talking about the fact that there's actually in-person actions,
Yeah.
and those in-person actions are now can now be live streamed and that sort of thing.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit, you know, and you talked a little bit about, you know, bringing an actual rendering of a what a solitary cell looks and feels like. So
Yep.
what are some other things that kind of like translate back and forth between like we're doing this in-person action, here's how it's being conveyed online?
Yeah, I think, you know, we have a good system with that now. We actually have a rally coming up this Thursday and a press conference. And the intention of that, you know, our bill right now, the Protect Act, is in the Senate, and we have over 21 co-sponsors for our bill. And so the intention of this press conference Thursday is really to address the narrative that the Department of Corrections has put out that this is going to be a really costly bill. And
Right.
so for the press conference, we'll have press there that's covering, and we usually typically will live stream the press conference so that people that can't make it in person can engage online, share it, and then that
Right.
also creates, you know, this effect where more people can get engaged because now it's being streamed online. So we typically a couple times a month, sometimes more than twice a week, with where we are in the legislative session, we'll have in-person actions where we invite people to come and we will share, we'll live stream and, you know, we'll share photos and all of
Right.
that. Yep. So unfortunately, since the Capitol is not like technically open, we couldn't have the replica cell back to the Capitol this
Right.
session, but we're just up there bringing, you know, shout out to our lead organizer, Barbara Fair, who leads a
Barbara
lot of
Fair.
those actions. You know, Barbara Fair?
Yep.
Yeah. So she leads a lot of our in-person actions. So shout out to her and shout out to Kevnisha, our other board member who I just saw join the
I
Facebook Live.
saw, yeah, I think I'm
Yeah.
Lisa.
So that's what it looks like nowadays, just being up there in person, talking to legislators, making sure actions are streamed. And we usually just try to address whatever misnomers people have about solitary and just the importance of this, which
Right.
is about humanity. People who are incarcerated are human beings and they deserve to be
Exactly.
treated with dignity. So, yeah.
No matter what. Yeah, no, absolutely. So just to let you know too, as you're talking, I'm also putting the website up and the specific pages of the website. So if everybody who's watching will look in the comment section. And I also want to let you know too, obviously, because this is streamed on Facebook and on YouTube as well. So we are leaving this up so people can visit. If you're not watching this live and you're watching it at a later date, please continue to put questions and comments and shout outs in the comment section, and we'll be watching that as well. So that way, if there's any further conversations, that we'll capture that. So take a look in the comment section. It's www.stopsolitaryct.org. And then there's several pages as well where you can take action, where you can donate, and where the legislative advocacy piece is as well. So, and then tell me a little bit about, are you able to tell me a little bit about the site as well? Because I'm looking at it and it's very well organized with, as far as like, this is what the PROTECT Act is. This is, the work, the media, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Joe, who actually organizes our site and makes sure it's updated and current with what we're up to and what our priorities are. So yeah, if you go on the site, you're going to basically be able to find out everything that you need to know about the PROTECT Act. There's a page that underscores the main components of our bill and how it's going to make a difference in corrections, not only for people incarcerated, but for the staff that work there. And that's a big component of our bill, that when we actually perpetuate solitary confinement, it harms the staff as well, who have to preside over something that really doesn't work and is harming people. So that's our, the PROTECT Act page. And then you can also, there's a button that you can click on to act now. And, as you're watching, if you want to know how you can get involved, how you can support, click on act now and sign our petition. This allows us, whenever we're talking to legislators, to just tell them there's, thousands of people who have signed our petition, right? That really makes a difference when we're speaking to legislators and doing legislative advocacy. Another way you can really support our cause is to actually contact your legislator. We have a sample email right there that you can literally just copy and paste and email your legislator, add your own words to it, but we try to make it easy for people to get involved. And then donate. We're funded through grants. We're a nonprofit, and we could always use support to continue our work. It is needed, and we are intending to get the bill passed this session, and there still will be more work to do. So we would appreciate anyone who's in a position to donate. You can just click our donate button and donate easily. And then there's also, as you go through the site, you'll see a video gallery. And that's where you can click on videos from previous actions, even dating back to the pandemic and before. And we also have, some video resources on there. There's a documentary made through Yale called The Worst of the Worst, which really highlights why Northern, which is the Supermax prison in Connecticut, needs to be shut down. And it is going to be, thanks to our advocacy over many years. And then what else about the site? I think that's, there's a Get Connected button where you can join the organizing calls. You can RSVP for those, or you could email us if you want to, make a connection, do an event together. And yeah, I think that's a summary of our site. There's a lot up there.
There is a lot up there, and the thing is too, when you see it, it's very compelling, right? And then it's also very easy to kind of like walk through and get the information that you need.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, like that was like one of the first things that I noticed as well, right? Because there are in New Haven County, there are so many organizations that, in Connecticut, right? So many organizations that's doing so much work. There's a lot of noise out there, and trying to like get the attention that you need to get. And then the other piece of it too is, right, people's attention span when they're looking for something, right? So it's like, okay, well, what what am I going to do? What do I do? It's like, well, there's a petition here, or you can donate, or you can read the legislation, or you can do this. So making it like very nice and easy to be able to do, to do this. And hopefully it's making your job easier and Joe's job easier, and whoever is like doing, because you want to do the work, right? Everybody in the organization wants to do the work.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I was going to say something real quick. Yeah, it's a nice hub for people. It's a nice place, the website, to send people. And I think, in this day and age, we're in a digital era. This is all part of the work. But I agree with you. It makes it easy to navigate and easy for people to just get in action, which is what we need.
Yeah, absolutely. How long has the site been up in the organizing and that sort of thing? What's the?
Yeah, so it's been for years. I'm not going to try to quote the number of years because I would be wrong, but I will give you some more context. Yeah. Stop Solitary is part of a national movement to end solitary confinement. We started and still are technically considered a program of the National Religious Campaign to End Torture, which at some point that organization recognized that torture was not just happening in foreign countries, that it was happening right here on U.S. soil in prisons. And then that's when the National Religious Campaign to End Torture really started engaging in the work to end solitary, because solitary is identified under international law as torture.
Right.
The United Nations and under the Mandela rules. So I think the National Religious Campaign to End Torture has been around for many years, and our work in Connecticut, at least 3-4 years and more.
Right. So, in saying that, does that mean that you were able to kind of do like a little bit of research and a little bit of like, what are best practices? What's some ways to to best do the work, bring people in, give them something to work with? Because and that's another thing too. I know that working with organizations, when I'm doing my work in general as well, it's basically like the easiest way to get people involved and keep people connected is to just help them by giving them the tools that they need in order to do the things. Here's a video, here's some images, and like you said, even when you're talking about signing a petition or writing, to the legislators, it's like, I'm going to help you out a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you like that first little paragraph, because oftentimes, and even me sometimes as a writer, when I get into something like this, I'm just like, what do I even say? Like, how do I even start? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So when you were, I guess this is like a 2-part question. So when you were coming into this, what was it like for you? Like, what could you kind of reach out and kind of grab for resources, and then what did you like then have to bring to it? So that's like the first question. So basically, like, were you giving like, here's like a little package of how you can help, or did you have to go, okay, I'm going to use like what my best practices are, what I can start with, that sort of thing, and then kind of make it up? Or was it like a combination?
I think it was a combination. I think, when I joined the board, we were kind of like in a new phase as a board, kind of like becoming like, there were some people that left, and we were just in a new space of creating newly what the organizational structure would look like. So I think that as a board member, what I tried to step in and do is to help create kind of like how people can get oriented to our cause, like a kind of standardize it in a sense. But a lot of organizing work, it happens in conversations, right? Because I'm working in the context of a team, we just talk about, we all bring our expertise and our ideas, and we really work together to create pathways for people to be easily engaged. in our work. And what's been great about our board is we also, in addition to having the support of Unlock the Box, which also funds us in the National Religious Campaign to End Torture, we also have been supported for many years by Yale and the Lowenstein Clinic, which is a human rights clinic that always has law students support in some of the more research-based work, research about, what have other states been doing who have been able to effectively eliminate solitary, right? We have a whole report that, shows states like Colorado, they've implemented, humane alternatives where people are de-escalated, where people really get the care that they need. So we have the Lowenstein Clinic that really supports and helps back us with what's research-based, right? Because you can't end something and not put something else in place that's really going to support people. And we recognize that. Yeah. And, we also, right before the pandemic, we, three of us had the pleasure to go down to DC for a conference that Unlock the Box held. And we were able to build and have training with about 13 other states from around the country who are in our coalition. I think I froze. I'm sorry. My back.
I can hear you. Your video just froze, but I can hear what you're saying.
Okay. But yeah, at that training, that training was very okay. The training that we went to in Washington, D.C., me, Barbara Fair, and Leighton Johnson, who's our education coordinator, they gave us a lot of helpful tools, so that we can learn from each other, right? And I think that's what we try to do, is not necessarily reinvent the wheel. Although I will say that our bill compared to other states is one of the most revolutionary in the nation, because it's not just focusing on eliminating what Department of Corrections defines as solitary. It's focused on really eliminating a culture of isolation that dehumanizes people. So, yeah.
And then that becomes, that can become the new template now, right? So it's like, okay, we've done this, we've added, we've made it more robust, we made it more humanizing, addressing, a broader issue. And it's like, now this can be the new template for that. And that also, not even for the bill, but if there's communications or strategies or processes to communicate, to bring in advocates, to bring in activists, it's like, then that becomes the new resource. And I think that's so interesting in this kind of like world of digital and online communications, where like in real time, we can share not only, we can not only bring in people into an organization or a larger organization, but then now it's like, oh, here are some best practices that you can take and you can drop it into another organization or help in another way.
Yeah. Can I say something quickly to that?
You can totally say something quickly. Yeah, this is your interview.
All right. Yeah. I love where you're going. And I think it's what you're pointing to is very critical, right? Because I think sometimes organizations, especially with this new era of COVID where we've had to bring things more online, you can get discouraged. And that actually is kind of like how I was able to step into this new role, is having a background in social media. I just always understood the importance of connecting with people online. Actually, for my day job, part of my accountability is marketing as well. And I have my own company where I've done that. And people can be really engaged online. And it's important and a necessary portal that if it's not being tended to, you miss out on a whole bunch of people that actively would get engaged. And I think Stop Solitary, our organization, has recognized the value of that. And that's how we came to develop this model. And I agree. I hope other organizations will implement and copy. Right? Because that's what it's about, people succeeding. And people, I think the other good side of COVID, right, is something so tragic for many people and difficult in many ways. But the other side of it is that people are reevaluating their lives. Yeah. And people want to do something that brings meaning to their lives, where they feel like they're making a difference. And, our work, having the digital organizing and this way for people to be engaged, it gives people a way to contribute. And I think that in and of itself, just when people are engaged and they're contributing, you know, we talk about people being prone to depression because of COVID and isolation. It helps society all around. You know, the
Right.
people that are home and can't get out, they can hop on our calls and call their legislators and feel good because they did something to make
They
a
did
difference for our
something.
society. Yeah. So that
Yeah.
makes me feel like really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that I know. I love the fact that that is something that is being that's being recognized as well, as far as, and I'm just having, you know, more and more conversations with more people, and I love that I'm having this conversation with you too, because I've been like, you know, like, oh, I want to have this conversation because I see the work that you are doing, that this organization is doing, and um, you know, and I've worked with other organizations that discuss very difficult topics and are able, you know, and it's so important, right? And now I think I'm talking more, if I were again to pull it back and kind of talk about it broader, like,
Yep.
what does the content and the context look like? And that's so very important. And we had touched upon it like in the very beginning as well. um, you know, the fact that you can take something that is just like, it's difficult to process, it's difficult to
Yeah.
understand. Not very many people do have the experience of this, either, you know, first person, second person, heard about it, whatever, and they don't know what it is. So it's hard to connect with it and humanize it, right? Because it's just like, oh, that happens to somebody else, that goes over there. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, it really does happen to all of us, because again, you never know what circumstances will happen. And then just
Yep.
like, yeah. And then, like you said, when COVID happened, it was just like, gosh, there's like so much more important stuff going on right now. And when you start stripping away all of the like things that were just like, oh, okay, well, that was just like this is
Right.
like people's lives. Like, no matter what it is,
Right.
it could, you know, this, anything else, it's like, this is people's lives. Like, people should have food, people should have water, people should have um you know, health, their health, just, you know, the fact that it's like, well, there's other health issues that are going on, you know, and it really brings a lot of very important things to the forefront. So being
Yeah.
able to take this context and take this, the content that's available, and turn it into something that's like, okay, I want you to, you know, you're informing, you're educating, people are understanding, and then they're wanting to do the work
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, we are. I think my good sister Kevnisha or somebody says we are all one step away from being incarcerated. How many of us may have done something that was against the law? We got away with it. I'm not advocating for people to do that. That's not my point.
Right.
You know, but it is, you know, we don't know. And if we say in Connecticut we're going to truly rehabilitate people, we need to be
Right.
doing it. We need to have integrity and do that, because guess what? More than 90% of the people that enter prisons are going to return to the community. And if they're
Yeah.
returning to the community more broken than they entered, that's more
Right.
costly for our whole state. And in fact, it costs, right? It costs, conservatively, it costs 2 times as much to house someone in solitary confinement as opposed to the general population. 2 times as much, and that's
Right.
conservatively. So it's
Yeah.
costly to us as taxpayers. We're torturing people and we're paying the cost as taxpayers.
We're paying, yeah, yeah.
Does that make any sense? Does it? No. And I think the
No.
more people that realize this, you know, the more that we're gonna pass this bill and make a difference. So that's what I always try to do in our role, and have the
Yeah.
people that engage with us do the same. You know, talk to the people in your circle, and that's what the people say that come to our digital organizing calls. They come from, you know, many different towns. You know, West
Right.
Hartford. Some people that may be so disconnected from it because they've never had a personal experience, and so
Right.
we talk about how to shift the narrative and let people know, contrary to popular belief, it's not the worst of the worst that's in solitary. You know, we have a prison in Newtown where most of the people that are housed there have a serious mental illness, and they're just in their cell 21 hours out the day, not for disciplinary reasons, just because that's
Right.
how DOC is choosing to manage the facility.
Yeah. The
And,
system is
and
so broken.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And you know, and even so, right? Because that's the other thing too, because whenever we talk about anything that has to do with some sort of punishment, right, it's always like, well, in the worst case scenario it's okay, instead of like, it's never okay. Like, we have to set a system where it's like just never okay, and that's why we have, you know, the UN saying that this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, because it's wrong. It's
Right.
no matter what happens, it's wrong.
Exactly.
And I remember
Exactly.
too going to I brought my kids to Philadelphia on a trip, and we went to Eastern State Penitentiary, which obviously is no longer, you know, it's defunct now. It's only been around for like many years in the past. But at one point, I guess, the prison system did try to be rehabilitative instead of, you know, the way that it is.
Yep.
And that's like a whole other conversation, but just for like a shining moment, you know, where it's just like, we're going to try to, even though we're putting people in prison, we're going to try to rehabilitate them, and then, yes, get them out into society. And
Yeah.
that all went away, and for weird reasons, you know, or
Mhm.
really horrible reasons. And some of them are like budget, or yeah, it's okay to be systematically racist, or you know, all these, like, you know, these things, and then it's just like dehumanizing, dehumanizing, dehumanizing. And then when,
Yeah.
yeah, being able to pull back. So I know we have a few minutes left because each of us have to go on with our day. I know it's hard. I want to give the next couple of minutes to. I know I've been, you know, we've been having this conversation. There's a lot, but I want to just give these next couple of minutes to you, to just like, you be the one to wrap this up for us.
Okay. Wow.
The wrap up. You're gonna do the wrap up.
Yeah.
Just the last push.
Yeah. First of all, everybody who's watching, thank you for tuning in and really holding space with us. And, you know, just to kind of riff off of what Julia was just saying, in Connecticut, Black and brown people are disproportionately incarcerated. It's like 85% of the people incarcerated in Connecticut, 85% are Black and brown. And why does that matter? Because we're perpetuating something that's inherently also racist, right? Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to add that just so people are aware. And what I want to leave you with is that it is actually possible to hold people accountable humanely. And that is at the cusp of our bill, is that if we are promising that people will be rehabilitated in Connecticut prisons, we need to put our money where our mouth is, and we need to have practices and legislation that ensure that every single person deserves that. Every single person deserves that. And the benefits of having a humane system, they are extraordinary. You know, in states that have actually eliminated solitary confinement, like Colorado, violence has gone down, you know, as high as 80% and sometimes more, right? So we have these models in other states that show us that other alternatives, humane alternatives, actually work. So I invite you, you know, if you've been moved by this talk, log on to our website, sign our petition, call your legislators, email them, because anytime a legislator hears from you, they know that this is important to their constituents. And that's how we're going to get this bill passed out of the Senate. That's our next step, right? So we need you to just get on the phone, email. Don't worry if you don't have the right words, copy and paste, and just share from your heart. Even if you've never had someone personally impacted, it doesn't matter. We're all human beings. And we have that connection to know that if we were in a box 23 and sometimes 24 hours out the day, how horrible and difficult that would be. And, you know, I just want to also just wrap up that my own brother, if it wasn't for my advocacy, I know that he could have possibly died in prison. And that's not a lie. Diabetes at 29 years old, where he never had it before entering incarceration. He became obese. His schizophrenia and his symptoms got worse. Literally. And so that's what we're fighting for, that people can actually be healed, because a lot of people who enter the system, they come in with pre-existing trauma that has led to the choices that they've made, right? And if we don't address that, no matter how long they're incarcerated, it may not help them. So that's at the cusp of our bill. And feel free to reach out to me personally on my Facebook at Raisha Bibbins. And you can find me, and I would love to connect with you one-to-one if you watch this and you want to get involved. So how was that, Julia?
That was so beautiful. Oh my goodness. Okay. Thank you once again. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on this show. And I am like super honored to be able to give an hour of Digital Media Sync, to be able to, to talk about this, because again, I personally am also a huge proponent of utilizing online communications, digital media, that cycle of like going out, performing actions, doing things, and then coming back and, reporting on it, or actually being in the space of, live streaming it out there. It's so important to utilize this for good, to change things. And I think that we have to remember that it's not, it's not all business. It's not all bad. It's always doing good. And I think to be reminded of that is really, really important. It just is. And just for me, I'm thankful because this brings me back to my own core as well, and reminds me, that we are all humans and we're not robots and we're not just workers. We all deserve we all deserve dignity, for sure.
We do.
So thank you so much. I hope to talk to you in person soon as well. I would also love to bring you back on the show like in 6 months or so, when and see where we're, like whenever, and and come back and say, what, all this stuff that we did online and offline, it worked. This is how it works. Let me give you the blueprint of that, shall I?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think definitely.
So thank everybody too for being here and watching and listening. I put the website up online. Again, if you have any questions, if you want to reach out at all, please do so, because this is on ad infinitum now. It's always here. It's in the books.
That's it. And share our post if you can't come to any calls. Share.
Right?
So, yeah.
That's the thing.
Yep.
Thank you so much once again, and I'll see everybody next week. And thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.